Waling Waling actually is and why it was established in the 1980s.
In 1979, conservative government abolished the domestic workers visa, and they were allowed, they gave a concession to the wealthy employers to bring in their domestic workers under a concession given to the employers only.
This usually meant that the employer name was written on the passport of the workers, and outside that household, they had no rights to be in the United Kingdom. The government did not want the so-called low-skilled migrants, but they want to facilitate rich employers to bring their domestic staff in the United Kingdom.
Then in 1981 to 1982, mostly women and few men started coming to the CFM, a Center for Filipino Migrant Workers. The domestic workers were looking for a help. They had no passport, no clothes, money, and no place to stay except the clothes they were wearing. They were afraid because also those days, once they're caught, they just deported straight away. They have to be deported without any right, without anyone fighting for them, because there was no any protection whatsoever in those days.
And Waling Waling was established and founded in 1984, a self-help group campaigning for the rights of migrant domestic workers. And during the period of 1984 and 1997, over 4,000 migrant domestic workers escaped the inhuman treatment they had been made to endure at the hands of their abusive employer.
As time goes by, it becomes a large group of women and men. So that's how everything's Waling Waling started.
And the name of our organization derived from Waling Waling. The name derived from a rare, beautiful variety of orchids flower. We called this Waling Waling because it is a very rare and colorful, very beautiful flower, and it resembles all the Waling Waling.
As the flower is shielded in the hill, so that's how the Waling Waling members are shielded in those days. When they left their employer, they were so tired and they were so scared. They have no right and they don't have freedom to go out freely themselves. So they only hide under the shadow of Kalea-an. So Kalea-an was their front campaigner and they were under Kalea-an.
CFMW, or the Commission of Filipino Migrant Workers, with the help of St. Francis of Assisi Church and Holland Park, facilitated the organization and gave us space to have our meetings. We campaigned for the rights of the migrant domestic workers, and our aim to change the legislation that tied domestic workers to their employer, that they have the right to change employer, that all domestic workers to be regularized and settled in the United Kingdom, and they were protected under employment legislation and have the same right as other workers in the United Kingdom. And finally, in 1997-98, we won our campaign with all sorts of campaigning, like interviews, media presentation, cultural activities, rally to the parliament, support from the trade union, church sectors, other organizations, But in 2012, Theresa May, then the Home Secretary of the coalition government, stripped the rights given to the migrant domestic workers. All the rights that we won were abolished.
Brenda, I wonder if you could tell us something about the challenges of organizing in those early days in the 1990s and how you managed to overcome them.
Most of us, well, all of us, doesn't have right here to stay because we are overstayer. And because of that, we can't choose the right work that we want. And some employer are being racist, and if they are if they are treating us like that, we can't complain because we don't have the paper, so we don't have rights to complain. It's not the rights, it's just we don't have guts to come forward and say what is our right as a worker because we are not regularized.
Also, education was a major issue those days because we were also many different nationals. The only access we have to education was the evening classes that was run by the help of CFMW and Kalia and the TGWU, then the Unite the Union. I didn't come to this country with any form of education. I can't read, I can't write those days, and thank God for all those English classes. I am able to read and write, and I can argue my own case and stuff. So I am very grateful for all those assets that was available.
Khadija, you talk a lot about the importance of people being recognized as workers. I wonder if you could tell us why that matters.
In a private household, they're not putting it as a job. They don't have any right as workers. They don't have any minimum wage. They get the contract, but they never follow the contract. Why they not having the holiday pay? Why not like hours of work? When they have a break, they have like Monday to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they can refresh themselves and relax. When there is no right, so they have to do whatever the employer wants. Where the domestic workers are tied to the visa, they don't have a right to change it. And then they said after 6 months they have to leave the country. They are workers, they're not visitors. They're not coming here to just visit and go. They're coming to work to help their family back home. Most of them, they left everything behind, like I did. And some of them they left their children, baby. Or baby. It's hard for the mom to leave the baby, but they do because they need them to get a better life.
So what you're saying, Khadija, if I'm right, is that it's being a worker, being recognized as a worker is about the rights that you have as a worker. It's about a contract, but it's also about being treated with respect. Actually,
the respect is very important. There is no respect at all. Even though you've done, I cannot explain it. We done a hard work. We look after their things. We do a lot of things, but they never respect domestic workers. They have to do whatever the employer wants. They don't get in pay. They're not getting food. They don't get in even one day to go out and meet people or go and study or whatever. It's hard, it's really hard. It touched the heart, really, when you speak about it.
These people are workers. The migrant domestic workers and all migrants throughout the Europe and the asylum seekers, they are all workers. They all have the right as a human right. We came from our country seeking a better livelihood for ourselves. So domestic work should be recognized as a worker, as a proper work in a private household. We deserve that and we demand that because the employers cannot function without the migrant working for them.
Thank you.
Angie, I wanted to ask you about trafficking and modern slavery, because there's a lot of talk now about trafficking and modern slavery, and a lot of the examples that are given are actually of domestic workers. So people will say domestic work is an area where people are very vulnerable to trafficking. Do you think that this is has been helpful to your campaigning and your struggle?
I think yes, people are concerned about migrant domestic workers as victims of trafficking and modern day slavery. But in my opinion, migrant domestic workers applying for human trafficking or the NRM or the National Referral Mechanism is not a good step for the migrant domestic workers. As far as I'm concerned, it is time that we return to the original overseas migrant domestic workers visa that has been given to the migrant domestic workers in 1997, but was removed by the government in 2012.
Marites, you've been in the UK for more than 20 years now.
Yeah.
Can you tell me something of the changes that you've seen that have affected both migrant workers and then more particularly migrant domestic workers?
Before that, they gave us what do you call it, amnesty, yeah. So it's easy for before that, it's easy to apply to for undocumented people. But nowadays, because it's really difficult for undocumented to apply for a settlement to this country. So that's my view.
So you think it's got harder for people, for migrants who are coming to the country, to be able to stay for any length of time?
Yeah, especially nowadays. Yeah, before that, yeah, we had that settlement. It's easy to apply, but nowadays it's not easy. It's really difficult for them to settle this in this country nowadays.
The changes for the last 20 years is really been something unbelievable. Theresa May, in April 2012, she was the Home Secretary, and she decided to introduce hostile environment for all migrant workers, just to make it difficult for people's livelihood to be affected so that they can leave the country. All the domestic migrant workers throughout the world is affected because of what Theresa May came up with. There is no moral right to do that to human beings, to people that are a group of workers. They come from different nationality, different countries to work in the country. Without the migrants, this country does not function. Migrant workers work in the hospitals. They're the one leading the hospital, the industry, the food industry, agriculture, everywhere. You will find migrants workers. There is no place in the UK, even in the Europe, that is not migrant that is running the world.
It's under the hostile environment the government made the life harder for the migrant and refugees, imposing many laws like difficult for migrant to find a job. If employer caught employing a migrant without proper document, they will be liable to pay 10 to 20,000. They cannot even rent a room. The landlord will check their passport. Worst of all, difficult to access and the health sector. They have to ask you first to pay before the doctors will see or treat you. In 2017, we've learned these abuses suffered by the undocumented, so we regrouped ourselves and reconvened to campaign and reclaim the rights of the undocumented taken from us in 2012.
So this is a question for everyone. which is what advice would you offer a migrant domestic worker who is arriving in the UK?
Don't start a job unless you ask and you make sure that your rights are saved. The contract, never forever sign it without read it properly, know what is inside of it. Like to know that there is a holiday paid, hours of work, break, everything. Before you sign it, even if you don't know, never sign it. Ask for someone to help.
Do not pay any lawyers any fee, because the lawyers cannot help you with the current situation. It's better to save your money if you're working rather than to pay any solicitor to fight for your documents, because you cannot get the legislation at the moment is changed. So you will not know help in that matter unless the concession is changed for everyone. So that is very important. Know your right in the country, how to move around freely, and just be well educated on your own situation. Talk to people, seek advice.
Social media is the norm now. Check the Facebook, especially the Waling Waling organization and Facebook, and we will definitely support the migrant domestic workers in this country.
I understand that you've been participating in the Gender Equalities Project. I wonder if you could tell me, what is the Gender Equalities Project and what have you learned from it?
The Generation Equality Project, or the GATT, or the Global Alliance Against Trafficking and Women. We're lucky to be invited to engage in a collective and participatory reflection process, which takes place over 7 months, and our last session was last November 4th. We learned how to document the reflection process, as well as to share the learning with our partners. And an important feature is to encourage mutual learning and community building across multiple boundaries.
It was a lovely meeting as well. It went well. But what we learned from them, we learned lots how to work together, but how to respond to the needs of the community, and how to share solidarity. So we learned from each other to share the stories and listen to the others. It's a big opportunity, and especially for us, for our organization, Waling Waling.
And following on the hearing of the PPT in London in 2018, we acutely aware of the hostile environment and how migrants are affected. And in June 2019, together with our supporters and Secretary General of Unite the Union, Diana Holland, we handed in a copy of the findings of the PPT hearing in London, along with the petition in Downing Street. Together with the PPT and the steering groups and other supporting organizations, we are campaigning to restore the rights of the migrant domestic workers and the refugees in this country. That is my opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody.